I completely agree with the Florida State take. We all do with that no football. So I'm with you. But I got a question. If Oregon would have beat Washington that night, I have a gut feeling, and I don't know what your thought is, and I haven't heard anyone say it. I don't think Oregon gets in either. I don't think a Pac-12 gets in. I think Georgia jumps Florida State and gets in. I think there's 2 SEC teams in there. Is that too far-fetched? With Florida State, I just don't know if Florida State is a top 6 team even with Jordan Travis. I don't know.
Yeah. That would have been great. I think there was so much hype about the Pac-12 in its last year. And, every week we were talking about the depth and the conference. Now, if you really looked at Oregon and really studied who they play, they didn't have a ton of big time opponents. But I think the fact that Washington was the one loss in a game that they really outplayed Washington in Seattle, they just didn't get it done that day. If you look at the stats, they definitely put up some numbers on them. I think if they would have won, it would have been a really tough thing for the committee. I do think Oregon would have got. I felt like when we were watching that game, the winner of that game on a Friday night is probably in, regardless, even with the one loss for Oregon. Florida State, just to be kind of clear on, like, if they want to change how we all watch the game and evaluate, what I'm always asked to do in August is, okay, watch every game and give us the opinion at the end who the best 4 are, not the most deserving. And I think what gets lost, I think, for Florida State fans, and I understand it, they did everything that was asked of them. They're undefeated. And so if you're undefeated and you're a Power 5, you should be in. And that's not automatic. It's the best 4. And if they want to change that to the most deserving 4, then let's change it to the most deserving. But right now it's the best 4 teams. And I think that's where it's subjective. You guys might think Florida State is, which is cool. I might not, which is fine. But everybody can have an opinion about what we think who the best 4 are. But don't get lost in the fact that if you're undefeated, you should automatically be in. That's just not the case at all.
I agree.
That's the great point as well. I know on this show we've discussed. We've had arguments where if Bama gets in, Texas had to get in because they played each other and Texas beat them. I know JB's like, well, things changed. At the beginning of the season is when Texas and Alabama played compared to where they're at now. Yeah. And like you said though, it's the 4 best teams. It's not the 4 most deserving. It's not your 4 favorite teams. So I agree with you. I just think that at the end of the day, the committee got it right in my opinion. I think we will see the best product now with these 4 teams. And it's hard for me to believe that Florida State gets in, especially without their QB, that they would be true contenders. And we don't want to see that.
And what sucks about all this is, we should be celebrating. This is the world, again, in this subjective 4-team playoff. We should be lifting Florida State up. This is one of their best seasons that they've had, right? And they're undefeated. But I don't know how this whole thing, I've been a Florida State guy. I grew up in the era that I grew up with Deion Sanders. I mean, how could you not be drawn to Florida State and their brand? And Bobby Bowden was the most lovable big time coach there was. I've always been a Florida State guy, and even the unis, just their whole look has just been, just my team. And for people to kind of insinuate that I'm out to get Florida State is the most ridiculous thing. I guess if we would have said,
Mike Norvell forever, good dude. Jermaine Johnson, one of my kids, football plays for the Jets who play there. I mean, he's done a hell of a job, especially after the Taggart debacle and everything. And
oh my gosh! I'll tell you what, and you can really relate to this. When I did Jimbo, when they were winning with Jameis, and they won it all, and I think 13 was the national championship. They beat Auburn out in LA at the Rose Bowl. They came back in 14 and still had Jameis. That was the first year of the playoff. They made it, and they got beat by Marcus. Jalen Ramsey was on that team, they got beat in the playoff. And really, if you remember, Lamar Jackson got him the next year, ran for about 200 yards, went crazy on him. And it was like Florida State was just starting to kind of drop from that point on. At the end of the Jimbo era, before Willie, they just kind of lost their way. They became super individuals. They became all about the league, all about getting to that next level. And I think it took them maybe 5 or 6 years of, even when Mike first got there, they had that cancer within that program. And it took him, if you remember those first couple of years, it was right around COVID. people wanted him to be fired. I mean, they wanted Deion Sanders. They wanted anybody. Their own fans that are killing me right now, they were killing Mike Norvell. They thought he was a bum and he couldn't coach. And so it is kind of what it is. But that is a rabid fan base that has to really appreciate where they just were just a couple years ago to where they are right now. And Mike Norvell deserves all the credit for what he's been able to pick up, because they were lost as a brand for about 5 or 6 years.
No doubt.